This podcast is recorded primarily in Stratford, Ontario. Stratford is on the territory of the Anishinaabe-Wakim, Atitawanderunk neutral, and Mississauga's land. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties, notably the Huron Tract Purchase. This new business acknowledges this history of the land and strives to be an ally to the Indigenous peoples of Canada, who have suffered through systemic racism, causing intergenerational trauma. I urge you to be aware of the path of truth and reconciliation that is ongoing in this country, which was fought for in the largest class action lawsuit against the Canadian federal government. Stemming from this lawsuit, thousands of children have been discovered buried at residential schools, the last of which closed in 1996. Want to know on three? 1, 2, 3.
Want to know?
And bonjour. You're listening to the official 1-0 Fantasy Football Podcast. It's time to join your host, the Commissioner Extraordinaire, the Fantasy Football Trade Monger, Owen, Odog, Tyreek.
Welcome to another edition of 1-0 Fantasy Football, where you're the one and I'm the O. Today, the one is also Mr. Mike Drake again, as this podcast contains part 2 of the interview with my dad, Bills Believin in Tyreek trade implications. As a bit of a disclaimer, this podcast was not intended to be split into 2 parts. So I've had to do some cutting and overall audio producing to give y'all a cohesive product. The following includes a brief introduction of my dad from the previous podcast, the preamble portion focused on Josh Allen, then a non-professional segue into part 2 of the pod, which will be Bills Believin focused, as Dad and I will be discussing the current state of the Buffalo Bills franchise in depth, as always, with a heightened focus on the players you need to know and value correctly for fantasy football. Let's bring him in, shall we? He should have been here by... Oh, there he is. We got a special guest. He's coming in hot. It's Mike Drake, everyone. Hey, Dad.
Hey, Owen. How's it going?
It's going well. Let's give you a proper introduction. Introducing the leader of the regular season wins category in my fantasy league of record, totaling 79 wins in 9 years. A purchaser with over 30 years of experience with one company, then a brief retirement, then a return to the working world. He was a McDonald's manager and a professional with a Frisbee. Recently, a sea flight doubles champion at the Stratford Badminton Club. The man, the myth, the legend. Mike Drake, everyone. Dad, how the hell are you?
I'm doing okay. How about you? That's a little much, buddy.
In what way?
That's good. Yeah, that was really long. You could just say, Dad. Yeah.
Introducing
anyway.
Dad.
Yeah. Here we are.
Okay, so now it's time for the meat and potatoes of today's episode, our interview regarding Josh Allen, the Bills. So let's hit it. Hit the preamble.
The strong arm Bills savior.
To begin this preamble and to provide context for the Bills portion of my interview with Dad, let's rewind back to the 2018 NFL Draft. In 2018, there isn't a consensus number 1 quarterback, but many teams need one, as they usually do. Most of which, the Browns, who have a front office that includes analytics-based Sashi Brown, who had a big hand in influencing the Browns to make their number 1 pick, Baker Mayfield. After this, the Jets select youngest week 1 quarterback starter, Sam Darnold, at 3rd overall. The Buffalo Bills trade the 7th overall pick, along with 2 second-round picks to move up to the 7th overall pick to select Josh Allen. 3 picks later, the fourth of the big quarterbacks, Josh Rosen, is taken by the Arizona Cardinals. And then at the end of the first round, the Ravens trade back into the first for their retiring general manager's gift to the team, Lamar Jackson. Now, I'll be the first to admit I was very into analytics at the time, and I was not a believer in Josh Allen. And Russell Wilson had showed the NFL the year prior that small quarterbacks could succeed. And I believe that Baker was the best of the bunch. And I believe followed closely by Darnold, who Josh, y'all met, had as his top guy. Lots of scouts and analysts loved Rosen for his quick release and his accuracy. And Allen honestly seemed like a shot in the dark with a big arm. His accuracy wasn't where it should be coming out of college, and he wasn't as polished as the other starters. The risk certainly paid off for the Bills, though. Rosen is currently a CFL free agent. Baker Mayfield is about to be traded. Darnold is flaming out with his second team. And mind you, Lamar Jackson has also been great, but some would argue not as good as Josh Allen. This is the 7th overall pick in Josh Allen. And from looking back on Twitter, did some research last night, Bills fans hated quotes such as Bills trash, ha ha ha, wrong Josh, and the next Blake Bortles can still be seen on this tweet, as well as barfing and stupidity implying gifts. He proved them all wrong. I'll first note that for fantasy football, this guy's arm is an absolute cannon. Watch one game, even just 2 snaps of the Bills, and you'll see Josh just laser beaming this ball around the field. And as a runner, he's leaping players, trucking them, and functions as their goal line back. He's unique in that way, like Cam Newton, where he's a quarterback combined with a running back, but in a power style. Thunder in contrast to, let's say, Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick's Lightning. But both of them, or all 4 of the mentioned quarterbacks, adding running back value to their already quarterback value. Allen has ascended every year, and I think it's a combination of his ceiling-shattering talent and also intelligent, calculating, maximizing, and thoughtful coaching. Brian Daboll built an offense around the strengths of Allen beautifully. McDermott, as a coach, as head coach, was brilliant too, coaching up the defense primarily. And Brandon Beane, their general manager, bringing in the right guys. They've brought in offensive linemen. They've brought in Diggs, Beasley, John Brown, all filling specific roles around Josh Allen. Mind you, running back hasn't been an area of particular focus, but that's mostly covered by Josh Allen. So in terms of fantasy, Allen finished as the quarterback 21 in his rookie season. I don't believe he played the entire season. Then the following year, he was quarterback 6 overall. And the years following, 2020 and 2021, he has been the quarterback 1 in fantasy. Also important to note, he went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes in the best game of the entire 2021 NFL playoffs, where they lost 42-36 in overtime. Speaking of a person who was watching this incredible game, Mr. Mike Drake, welcome back.
Thanks.
Now, going back, we also talked about the Josh Allen draft and the reaction of the Bills. So before we hop into our interview questions, what were your thoughts at the time? How did the other comments make you feel? Or did you think that was accurate or kind of summarizing the general vibe and kind of haha now, right?
My thoughts at the time were, okay, we've got a quarterback that can fire the ball.
Better than AJ McCarron.
Yes, better than AJ McCarron. But accuracy issues, absolutely. Was he playing in the system he should have been playing in at, was it Wisconsin or forget where he was from?
Wyoming.
Thank you. I knew it started with a W. When you get to be my age, you just start with the first letters. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, no, it's, I remember, and then all the social media comments going on about him. I remember you saying to me, okay, maybe. It might work out. I think you're just trying to be nice.
And I was trying to be nice because, like I said, very analytics based at the time and wasn't feeling it. But
no, absolutely not. But no, there's no. I like to give them a chance and see them myself, and then working. They have to work with the coaches that are there, and maybe he didn't get the development that he could have at Wyoming. Don't know that, but here with Buffalo, they saw the potential and they tapped into it, and they built, like you said, Dable and the coaches built around him. And got to protecting him a little better. And now I think the game slowed down for Josh Allen, and he can see things that elite quarterbacks can see, and he can park that ball wherever he needs to. It seems like he just there's still decision making. There's still question marks about his decision making while at that high level, but all in all, I think you're seeing his interceptions drop. He's making better decisions and throwing the ball away when he can, for sure. But he's a QB1, absolutely, in our league.
And it's funny too, because you see these teams taking chances on the big armed quarterback in the first round, and it seems to rarely work out. The exceptions have been through the recent years. So I'm wondering if that could cause errors in the future, where maybe this year Malik Willis is getting overdrafted because of his big arm. And then they're comparing it to, oh, look at what Josh Allen did for the Bills. But when you have historical data, Brock Osweiler, Paxton Lynch, all of these big armed Jacob Eason with the Colts, all of these big armed quarterbacks getting overdrafted just because NFL scouts have this hubris where they think that they can do the same thing. But efficiency turnarounds like Josh Allen's, they don't just happen every day. Like this is rare, and it takes everything. It takes the right scheme. It takes the right building pieces around him. But we'll get more to Josh Allen in a minute. Psych. We're going to get more into Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills right now. Welcome to part 2 of the interview. So let's transition into the Bills section. After the playoff performance, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes going toe-to-toe. I know this is kind of a sore subject for Bills fans, but I mean, if it was my team and I had a quarterback that could go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, Carson Wentz, if I had a quarterback that can go toe-to-toe, if I had the guy, I'd be feeling pretty good. But after a playoff performance and a glaring lack of talent at running back, as I mentioned, Josh Allen for 3 years straight of a quarterback one in fantasy.
Absolutely. There's no question. This kid's proven it. Yep. If he's not gaining a touchdown on the ground, he's throwing them in the air. He's throwing bombs all day long. Love the guy. Plays for the right team. And, his completion percentage that everybody from day one said that's going to be his Achilles heel. He maxed out way above 69%. I think it was. I saw on NFL.com. Yeah. So I think it dropped a little to 63, but still, come on, you're in your 60s. That's a great ratio. These guys, we got the right receivers. I've been salivating all year and haven't said nothing to you about this, but when we picked up Crowder to replace Beasley, you're thinking it's Isaiah McKenzie, I think, that's going to be the slot receiver. But I'm pretty sure we picked up Crowder. Tell me I'm wrong.
I have learned something today. Jamison Crowder is a member of the Buffalo Bills.
There you go. That's where I've been saying, I think that's a better move than Beasley. I think he's better than Beasley, honestly.
Wow.
I don't know why, but I don't know if he's going to mesh with Josh. That's the only thing. I know the Beezer and him were always talking. You can see them on the sidelines.
Right.
And I watch each game in depth, and I watch for things, not just the play. I watch the sidelines and just seeing what's going on. And I read a lot about the Bills, and I know Beasley. Say what you want about him personally, but as a player and a guy who wants to win, that kid is a great player too. But Crowder, I think, is going to be a nice addition. Isaiah is a great gadget guy.
Right.
They like to bring him in and do different things with him. And also, if somebody's down, Isaiah can step right in. But I think they've got the right idea, bringing Davis, getting him more touches. I think, here's a guy, Davis, that's going to see more balls. I think him and Josh have a great chemistry. I think they all have a great chemistry now. I just don't know about Crowder. That's the only one. It's the one that's the question mark for me, but I'm real excited to see what happens during the year for sure.
So we're going to get into the skill positions in a second. I'm going to steer this conversation just a little bit back to Josh Allen, just for a couple minutes.
Yep.
I think you're right. He's got to be the quarterback one. There, you could make an argument for any of the top five, I would say, and the top five being Allen, first of all, then Mahomes, then Justin Herbert, then Matt Stafford, Joe Burrow, Kyler. Burrow probably higher. If on the spot, if I'm going to do my quarterback rankings, Allen first, then I would probably go Mahomes and Burrow kind of interchangeably in there. I think both of them are going to have excellent seasons. And then Herbert and Kyler, and then Stafford. Lamar Jackson's got to fit in there as well. But I think what the conversation for Josh Allen has to center around is the investment that you're making in this asset. Still a human being, sorry, but as a fantasy football asset. Josh Allen is currently being drafted as a second-round pick. And at that point, I'm out. Now, if Josh Allen was to fall, let's say, where he's been drafted in previous years, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th round, like maybe it hasn't been that late in recent years where he's been finishing as the quarterback one, but he's definitely being drafted as a quarterback one overall finisher, should be, for 2 years in a row, should be drafted in the second round. And our league has added or has made some changes to where the quarterback is valued more, where there's 6 points for a passing touchdown and 4 points against for a interception. So that's placing some more value. And we have 300-yard bonuses for the quarterback. So it's placing some more value. But would you rather have Allen in the second, Mahomes in the third, Herbert in the fourth, Lamar Jackson in the fifth, or you can keep going down to Joey Burrow and Aaron Rodgers in the 6th round, Stafford, Prescott, and Hurts in the 7th. You've got all these options, and it's kind of been the same thing as when Mahomes threw. There's the year where Mahomes threw for 55 touchdowns. It's incredibly hard to repeat as the quarterback one year after year, just because there's injuries and the variance and everything like that. Is he going to be great? Yes, but the value at a second-round pick is not there for me. If I'm sitting here drafting today, I'm going to be targeting Burrow or Rodgers in the 6th or Lamar Jackson in the 5th, get that running value that you can still get. And hopefully the players that I draft in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th are going to be forming a core with that later round quarterback. And I would prefer to even go later, but these are the ones that I have kind of on my docket right here. And Dad asked a good question before we started. Where's Tua being drafted? And he's all the way in the 11th. So if you like all the tools around him and you think he's going to be throwing some touchdowns, why not try to take that value? And then maybe you can trade for Josh Allen later in the season if you don't have keepers that are going to affect that either. So you mentioned some of the skill players on the Bills. I have a strong take that I need you to help me through here.
Sure.
I see an offense that's rated in the top 3 overall in the NFL with crazy amounts of yards and crazy amounts of touchdowns with an electrifying quarterback, Josh Allen. And with Josh Allen, this receiver went toe-to-toe with Mahomes. It's been 2 straight years of Gabriel Davis being one of the difference makers in a Buffalo offense in the playoffs. I had to watch him decimate my Colts the year prior with a few beautiful catches along the sideline to basically sustain an entire drive by himself. So we exit, like you mentioned, slot receiver Cole Beasley and the ghost of Emmanuel Sanders. We bring in Jamison Crowder, which I didn't know about, and feeling a little bit embarrassed about that, but that's fine. These are the little moves that slip through the cracks. So you got Jamison Crowder, you got Isaiah McKenzie in the slot, but you got Davis, a 4th round pick who legitimately broke a quarterback. If you haven't seen this highlight, you need to Google Gabriel Davis in the playoffs. He makes a move where this cornerback that's trying to cover him, he's flat on his face within 2 seconds. So I'm drafting him as high as a wide receiver 2. So that's in the range of wide receiver 12 to 24. We assume that there's 12 teams in a league, so those 13 to 24 wide receiver ranks. Diggs is going to go early in the draft, and we saw how hot and cold he can be, and we saw how incredible he can be as well. But am I crazy for being all in this year on Gabriel Davis?
I know you like him, Owen. I know you like him. And I think they're going to give him his due this year. If you watched his development over the last 2 years, regular season only, and looking at his work in the regular season, not a lot of touches, not worth a wide receiver 2 at all, or 3 or 4, as far as I'm concerned. And then playoffs don't really help us in our league for sure. But the playoffs, outstanding. This kid lit it up. He's got a great rapport with Josh Allen, and now giving him his due as a regular starter, which I think is going to happen this year. I'm just wondering. There's a lot of weapons Josh has this year. I think he's still going to light it up. I think you're still going to see your points, and you're right about the value as far as Josh Allen goes. I didn't get a chance to comment there, but in the 2nd round, there's no value there at all. None at all. So, but Davis, WR2, I think it's his time. Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
I can understand you being excited about him. The kid's got it. The kids can hang on to the ball. He can catch that ball. And it's saying something when you're getting tossed by Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Who drives a missile at you 10 yards away and just almost takes your hands off.
It certainly takes a different type of wide receiver to grab that ball.
Really, I think so, just from watching and listening to the wide receivers and interviews saying, especially new wide receivers coming in going, oh, wow, can he ever throw that ball?
Yeah.
My hands, it just hurts. And yeah.
And you mentioned the value of Josh Allen in the 2nd round, and that this almost comes back to, as with anything in fantasy football drafts, it comes back to the value. And I'm looking at Gabriel Davis right now. He's being projected as an 8th round pick in 12-team leagues.
There's value.
Surrounded by the likes of Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark, Marquise Brown, Hollywood, and Cortland Sutton. Now, I definitely take Cortland Sutton and the Russell Wilson experience. I think that's going to be exciting to watch in the 8th round over Gabriel Davis. But after that, I think you're having a conversation about the breakout of Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're having a conversation about Devontae Parker. But everything else in that range, like I'm smashing that button to draft Gabriel Davis all day. I think that I don't even know how to tone down my excitement. This is going to be one of my guys this year. I'm going to see how many teams I can get him on. And I think he's primed for a breakout. You look at Emmanuel Sanders being brought in, and yeah, that kind of helped him develop, helped him learn. And I think another year later, you're looking at an asset that's going to be a consistent point producer week in and week out. I think that they're going to be now being presented with the news of Jamison Crowder. I think Jamison Crowder and McKenzie, I think they're doing the same thing where they bring in this, maybe nearing the end of their career veteran in Jamison Crowder. Jamison could replace Beasley 1-for-1 and steal all of this value. So that all of this may be for naught, but that's not what I believe. I believe that he's going to split between Isaiah McKenzie because he was too exciting and too electrifying to put back in the bottle. And you said like a gadget player, but I think you're going to consolidate this offense just to, a few options here in Davis and Diggs. And there's going to be less attention to the slot, just like when John Brown was that starter there. And yeah, I'm here for it. I don't think in my leagues, I don't think Davis is going to be making it to the 8th round. So Now, we mentioned the slot receivers, but we can't go too much further without discussing the Bills tight end situation. Dawson Knox was a usable tight end last year. He finished as the tight end 7 with 9 touchdowns and over 500 yards, which isn't that much in the yards department. But in terms of tight ends, the tight end landscape after those top 5, it kind of just falls off a cliff. You're open for some touchdowns. And when you're in an offense with Josh Allen, there's going to be touchdowns. And you saw, 2 touchdowns in one of the playoff games this year from Dawson Knox, 2 incredible touchdowns. And they've also added OJ Howard, one of my favorite tight end prospects over the past few years, but a disappointment with Tampa Bay for sure. So, I mean, what are we looking at here for tight end? Is there any value here to be gained? Is OJ Howard going to take over for Dawson Knox? I mean, what questions are we asking here?
That's the one of the best questions you can ask one. That is a killer, because did you know how many touchdowns Travis Kelce got last year? 9. How many did you just say Dawson Knox had?
Also 9.
Yeah, but so it's interesting, the 2 different organizations, and Mahomes and Josh Allen throwing to a skilled wide receiver, base of guys. And so I really think it might hurt Dawson Knox having OJ Howard join the team. I really do. He might have capped.
Yeah, and we saw a breakout last year. Like, he, without these additions.
He went from 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns the next year to 9.
Yeah.
And I really think he's not going to have the same year. I think he's going to be blocking more. I think he's going to drop for sure.
And that's going to lead perfectly into the blocking is going to lead perfectly into our running backs discussion, which is coming next. And I think they're kind of starting to telegraph some of their moves here, where they're bringing in OJ Howard, who can function as a pass catcher, might have gotten buried behind Brate or couldn't get past Cameron Brate on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers depth chart. And then you have the return of Gronk. So definitely an expendable asset. And OJ Howard he was signed to a 1-year, $3.5 million contract. That's not too bad. That included a signing bonus. So he's definitely going to be on the team. He's definitely an asset that they value, but do they value mostly his blocking prowess? And is that what Knox is going to be primarily used for? And I think from you watching him every week, and he can block, and it almost seems like we're setting up an offense for a new running back, potentially.
You never know. I don't know. And I've been disappointed with, and my frustration on, because I'm always looking at running backs every year for Buffalo, and especially the last 3 or 4 years. And, every time I get so excited at the start of the draft, and I'm all ready and I'm waiting for the first pick. And when it comes up, I go, another defensive player.
Sean McDermott got him again. So yeah, let's move into the Bills running back room. I have here on the show sheet. I really don't want to talk about the Bills running back room, but I mean, of course, it's fantasy. I do. Singletary appears to have taken over. Moss was heavily drafted. I was heavily drafting him last year because, we're talking about value. He appeared to be the last starting running back that was available before you start taking backups. Kareem Hunt probably in front of him as one of the backups, but that he holds standalone value. But now we return to Singletary, and a player whom the Bills have shown immense distrust in the previous years and dissatisfaction. You even mentioned dissatisfaction with the Bills running back. And I saw the hope in your eyes and body language as we got closer to the Bills pick. Najee Harris gets drafted last year. Bit of a crushing blow, but let's start off. Okay, let's say the Bills don't add any more running backs. What do you think of Singletary, and how is he going to function in the Bills offense?
I think you got to look at the offensive line. We did pick up a player, Roger Saffold, I think his name is, and he's a better run blocker than he is a pass defender. So
Roger Saffold, previously of the Rams, opening giant holes for Todd Gurley that you could drive a car through, and which was needed by the end of Gurley's knee lifespan,
Exactly.
Move to the Titans to run block for Derrick Henry. So definitely immense talents, but you can see that this guy is a road grader. He's going to open up those holes, and you got little motor back there. And for context too, before you jump back in, Devin Singletary being drafted in the 8th round currently.
Yeah, I think there's value there. You look at the offensive line, and like I said, and and just me, listening to interviews, watching interviews with the offensive line guys, they love run blocking, and I love when Josh takes off, getting in front of them, helping them out, and helping them vault over those other players, and just you can see it in their eyes that they like doing that better. But I think, in my personal opinion, if they don't do anything and don't draft a running back for the upteenth year again and disappoint me, then Singletary's our guy. But Singletary made a significant jump last year. It's instead of 2 touchdowns the prior 2 years, he went to 7. Mm-hmm. And his yardage was his best ever, 870 yards. Not a 1,000-yard season, but we know how little they use the running back. So,
well, and they were cycling between Matt Breida and like we said, Zach Moss, and it just was not working.
No, it doesn't seem like they're comfortable with the running game. I think you're right, Owen. You mentioned her way earlier in the show that we're talking about, Josh Allen doing all the running. He is the running game. So, but I think, and this is Singletary's contract year, I believe.
Yeah.
So, you never know. He might take off. A 9th round, you said, as far as what they're projecting?
Yeah, no, 8th round. So it's kind of similar to you got Edmonds. We talked about Edmonds and Mostert in that round. Yeah. So I think what I'm also discovering is that no matter what strategy you take, you could take the 0 running back approach where you're taking wide receivers in the early rounds, and then maybe you scoop up if the Bills don't pick up anybody else, but then you can scoop up in the 8th and 9th round Singletary, Mostert, and maybe you can start to form a running back core that way where you have wide receiver studs. It's an interesting strategy, but not one that I tend to pursue, but it's definitely possible. And like you said, Singletary definitely took that step forward and seemed to take over the backfield at least, and as they completely lost trust in Moss and Breida, which was hilarious to watch. But you're right. I mentioned it. Allen's the starting running back essentially, and you're basically looking at a running back 2/3, maybe a flex player in Singletary. Still holds value. Don't get me wrong. Starting running backs hold value. It's just not as much as a team without a running quarterback sometimes.
A lot depends on any movement coming up in the next little while before the season. Like, are they going to draft somebody?
Yeah.
Not. Are they going to? Probably not.
Let's jump into that. So let's talk Bills' future running backs now. Who's your dream Bills running back, and then who's your reality option for Bills running back? And would they fit? Like, where would you be drafting them in fantasy if you feel so inclined?
Where would I be drafting them?
Yeah.
Owen, you the way you put the question to me was, who's your dream?
Yeah. Who's the dream?
I want Javonte Williams.
I don't know if he's available, but I would be all for that. He would go down in value, actually.
Probably. He probably would. Or Derrick Henry or Jonathan Taylor. Give me one of them. They're my dream.
Jonathan Taylor's not coming there. No. Jonathan Taylor for Josh Allen.
Reality, I don't think it's a deep draft class this year for running backs. I usually save that for the last, and I usually look at that the week before and get all excited about the prospects of the Bills not drafting any of these guys. But this year, I think there's a couple of kids, and I wrote their names down. There's a Breece Hall, Iowa State, that lit it up. And I can't see him going in the first round of the NFL draft this year. Maybe he might, but that's just my personal opinion, and that's an early look. And then there's Kenneth Walk. is his name, I think.
Is it Walker?
I can't read my own writing. Walker, maybe? Michigan State.
Yeah, Kenneth Walker the third.
Yeah, he's a little smaller.
Kenneth Walker the third.
Kenneth Walker the third. Yes, but he's a little smaller. But reality is, they're either going to have to trade for a decent running back or draft one.
Yeah, and I think this leads perfectly into my dream Bills running back and reality option. So my dream is that the Bills trade for either Christian McCaffrey and it's funny, we mentioned dream, but both of these players, we mentioned Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley, are both rumored to be available through trade. If the Bills brought in Christian McCaffrey, or they managed to bring in, and I don't know if the cap space, but more realistically, if they bring in Saquon Barkley and he can come back from his injuries, maybe you have Singletary as the backup in his contract year, because why not? I think that's the move that puts the Bills over the top. If Saquon Barkley moves to the Bills, he's definitely falling still within my first 2 rounds. And I would love to get Saquon as a second round pick of the Bills, or second round pick in fantasy from the Bills. Reality option. I think Saquon is still a reality option. I think you can acquire him on the cheap right now. Like, I don't think anybody's made any substantial trade offers, or he'd already be off the Giants. It was a hilarious pick when they made it. Not saying that Saquon's not talented. I think he's one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. One of the best pure runners, and broke the combine with his athleticism, but he was drafted over definitely positions of need for the Giants. And now you see it's run its course. They're not going to pay him when they're trying to pay other positions and patch other holes. I think Saquon is my both dream and reality Bills option running back. And I think you touched on an excellent option as well, where you have running backs in there. You have Singletary in his last year, and you have Moss, who's been excommunicated by the team.
Poor Zach.
So I think that would, and they went and they drafted 2 defensive ends last year. So I mean, I'm sure you would be happy or okay with them taking a cornerback or any defensive player to kind of like, maybe they take the Poyer replacement of the future in the first round, but why not Breece Hall? I'm here for Breece Hall. He could have the exact same effect that Najee Harris did, where Najee's getting drafted in the first or second round immediately upon drafting. Breece Hall is my running back 1 out of this class, and I think he would be an amazing fit in Buffalo. So if that comes, we're going to have some Breece Hall dance party or something. I mean,
he's got a great hat. He's got a great name, doesn't he?
Oh,
Breece Hall.
Was that just a breeze that was blowing by? Or was he already in the end zone?
Buffalo Bill, Breece Hall.
Yeah, and I mean, both of them all of this comes with a grain of salt, because like we mentioned, Josh Allen is the running back 1, but there's still going to be value. It's just a question of where that value is in the fantasy football draft. So I got a quick question for you here. So the Bills defense for fantasy and individual defensive players, they a top 10 defense with the return of Tre'Davious White. And how do you feel about the addition of Von Miller?
I have always, there's a couple of questions there. I have always tried to keep the Bills defense on my team.
Yeah.
Always. You know that.
Yeah.
And rightly so. I think they're always probably in the top 10 with McDermott as the main man. Even when they're rebuilding, I think there was stretches where they were really, really good. But Jerry Hughes has left and gone. He's a free agent now. Starr is gone. He's a free agent now.
Star Lutalele.
Star Lutalele. He could, he could fill. Just watching him play, like if he's focused on the offensive line, and he'd swallow up 2 guys. It was just amazing how he did it, and so. Now we're going with some of the kids, and we picked up Daquan Jones from Carolina. It's always a Carolina guy, isn't it, Owen?
Yeah, the Panthers are your farm team, right?
That's right.
That's good. That's good. It's good that the Bills have a farm team. That's nice. For a while, the Colts were just taking from Philly in the same sort of vibe, so it's good.
And I'm getting to Von Miller here, but Shaq Lawson coming back. I was never a Shaq Lawson fan to begin with, and he goes back to Rex Ryan's days as a coach, and he loved him. And I think he proved serviceable with was it Miami? Yeah, he went to Miami. Yep. Now he's back.
Bit more of a run stopper as opposed to the expected pass rush, I think, as that first round pick.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. I think you're right there. So, and Rousseau,
but a solid player.
Yeah. Rousseau made great steps last year. Great arms on him. The guy's crazy. And my fave in the middle there, my little buddy, Oliver. I love him.
Eddie Oliver.
He's always been Eddie. He's been one of my favorites. So I don't think nothing's going to suffer. And now you've added to a secondary with Von Miller. Do you call him a linebacker, or what do you call him? An edge rusher? Like, he's a perfect hybrid. I know they're going to pick his spots and let him go. And let him do his thing, because that's what the Bills do.
Yep.
And we've got so many, edge rushers that we brought in, let go, or kept. Jerry Hughes, great pickup from what team, Owen?
I was wondering if this was going to come up. The Indianapolis Colts traded Jerry Hughes, a bust first round pick.
For who, Owen?
For Kelvin Shepard, I think it was, some no-name linebacker.
Great pick. Jerry he served his team well, and
should have got a first-round pick in that deal.
I know. It's too bad he got older, but that's the way it goes. I think we got a great, behind him we got Rousseau, and we got Boogie.
Boogie Basham.
Nobody talks about Boogie. Basham. So anyway, I love these guys. I'm not sure on Epineza. He has his moments, and I think they bring him in. Just
maybe you could learn from Vaughn. Pick up some tips along the way.
Maybe, but he just doesn't look big enough. But anyway, it's just me. He doesn't look big enough. But anyways, as far as for fantasy, I'm all in.
Yeah.
You don't have to, I'm preaching to my own choir here.
Yeah. And that's the thing about defenses is like it just like everything else here. It seems to be a reoccurring theme. If y'all want to have some takeaways from this episode, it all comes down to value. The Bills defense will probably be first or second off the board, maybe with the Rams, you'd think. So it all depends on whether you want to invest. And the best piece of advice that I can give y'all for fantasy defenses is to look at the first few weeks of matchups. So if we rewind back to last year, there were a lot of teams or a lot of managers drafting the Washington now Commanders defense early because they had a vaunted defense going into the year, and the Rams defense early in drafts. I was snapping up the Broncos later in drafts with like the last pick. If you look back, and I can tell you right now, if you look back at the Broncos matchups from the start of the year, everybody pointed it out after the fact, but this is me bringing you tomorrow's news today, where if you look at all of these matchups, they play the Jets. The Jets of last year, who were just god-awful. Who knows what's going to happen this year, but they play the Jets. They play a few other awful teams, and all of a sudden their defense is just racking up the points. I want you to take the time next year, for those of you listening, to go in and look at the matchups. The Bills could be the pick, but if they're playing, let's say, the Patriots and the Dolphins, these new look offenses that are going to be firing and scoring points, then what's the point? Why would you should be looking for these maybe average level defenses, and not saying that the Broncos were average, but they were definitely overlooked because of the Teddy Bridgewater starting quarterback effect, but they're overlooked. And you need to look for the matchups because that's more important for the defenses than actually having a good defense, is something that I've found. So those are my comments about the Bills defense. And then in terms of individual defensive players, if you play with defensive players, it's too bad that Tremaine Edmonds as an first round pick doesn't rack up too many of the sacks or too many of the tackles and sacks. Like he's in on a lot of this stuff, but he's not really too much of an individual defensive player to own. But in terms of players that you do want to own, take a look at Jordan Poyer. He's in on a lot of tackles and on a few interceptions per year. And I think Dad mentioned as a developing player that could be exciting to own. Gregory Rousseau. There was a play last year with those long arms that Dad mentioned. He just snatched the ball. He deflected the ball up to himself, snatched it, and had an interception. It was incredible. So, I mean, that's the guy. That's one of the guys you want to look at. And a first round pick could be one of the guys that's developing into the next edge rusher that we want to own for sacks in fantasy football.
Absolutely.
So we commented on the hope for the Bills drafting a running back in the draft. I have a question in here. We don't need to spend too much time on it, but is there any other needs that you think the Bills have to head into the draft?
Yeah, I think because we lost Levi Wallace.
Right.
And I don't think that's a big loss. He was decent. And as far as fantasy, there was no fantasy implications at all. But I think we need a cornerback.
Yeah.
I think that's probably one. I still think a wide receiver. They seem to have good luck drafting wide receivers late, and Gabriel Davis. There's been some decent players that way. But for me, always, Owen, what do I want them to draft? What position? Please say it out loud with me.
Running back. Yeah. And yeah, I agree. Like, I think I already mentioned the cornerback. That seems like a glaring position of need, especially when you saw Tre'Davious White go down with an injury last year. Then it was like, oh no, what are we going to do?
it's like, yeah. And that might have been part of the problems in the playoffs, that one game. It could have been. I don't get me started. There's lots more that I think went wrong in that playoff game, and I don't want to talk about it, but yeah, they're always my opinions only. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think you're hitting on it. I think you're hitting on the right areas. If I was looking at this team from an outside perspective, running back definitely stands out. You can always use help on the O-line, but mentioned that you already brought in Saffold, so that can kind of help to keep that line together. And they seem set on the defensive line, but McDermott can always surprise us and just keep drafting them. And linebacker, the same sort of situation, but they did pay. Fill in the name in here for me. Who did they pay last year? Milano?
They did pay Milano.
Yeah, they gave him a deal, and
Milano was gonna. Yeah, thank God.
And I think I've seen some people talking about them taking a Poyer replacement as he gets a little older, but I think there's more pressing needs at second cornerback and running back if you're going to look at the early picks. Yeah.
Do you want my prediction this year?
Yeah, give me your prediction. At this point, we might get a different one coming up to the draft for sure. Yeah.
Well, at least I get it on record. Got it on record.
Yeah, we'll get a soundbite from this.
I don't have to write it down, put it in an envelope like my Christmas present, and tell you what I'm getting. So
okay, well let me lead you in. We're gonna have our first ever live prediction. So with the 25th overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, Mike Drake predicts the Buffalo Bills will select
from Clemson cornerback Andrew Booth Jr.
And he's currently being mocked around that area. So I think that's a great prediction. If I'm going to put a live prediction here, the Buffalo Bills select running back Breece Hall.
I would gladly say I was wrong for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So,
oh my God, that'd be nice. Anyway,
another long episode, which might be the case when I bring on Josh or my dad for the Bills and the Colts love. Time can definitely fly. So I'm hoping that for all of you still listening, time has flown for you as well. But we're going to end off here with the last question that I give every guest. So Dad, who's a player, any team that fantasy players should pay more attention to? Is there an ascending player or one that's wowed you? And while you think about it for a second too, I think you've already provided the audience with one throughout here where what could happen with Jamison Crowder with the Bills. This is a guy that always gets a lot of passes, a lot of volume. So if you're in a full PPR league, maybe consider looking at Jamison Crowder. But for now, go ahead.
That is one of them. Cortland Sutton with Russell Wilson coming in, I think is going to, and I hate to tell my adversaries this, but yeah, Cortland Sutton, I'm going to be looking for. Jamison Crowder. There's going to be some real value, I think, with those guys, but there's always somebody thinking like us and always somebody that knows more than me, but those are the two, I think, for me. Also Devonta Smith with Philadelphia.
Now, this is perfect because Cortland Sutton, kind of like Anthony going with Eckler first and Joel going with Waddle, a more known player. So not exactly what I was asking, but it definitely helps to emphasize that we even saw in the interview today that Cortland Sutton's going in the 8th round after Russell Wilson's been acquired. I don't think that's going to be the case come draft day. I think you'll be looking at an average draft position around the 4th or 5th round, or just take him there because he's going to be the number one target there, unless we think it's Judy, but I would full on believe that it's going to be Cortland Sutton. And I think that the Jamison Crowder call is an excellent one as well, because you can probably get him with your last pick because no one else is thinking about Jamison Crowder. There might even be people drafting Isaiah McKenzie, which, I mean, shoot your shot, but Jamison Crowder is that reliable slot option. And I think the best advice that I can give you for your later round picks is pick guys that you're going to be able to see their involvement week one. Week one, you're going to be able to see if Jamison Crowder is actually involved in the Bills or if he's not. And then you have a roster spot available for your waiver wire pickups. That's perfect. But Devonta Smith is definitely one that should be called out. I think he experienced the growing pains with Jalen Hurts last year, being his first full year starting. And I think that he proved that he belongs in the NFL, that his skinny frame that everybody was worried about might not be the biggest worry in the world. They are still looking for another receiver, but that might take the attention off him. So is there anything else that you wanted to touch on for Devonta?
No, that you hit everyone on the head. I think that's just growing pains last year. And this year, I really think he's poised to have a great year for sure.
Yeah. And for context, the fantasy football community seems to agree with you. He's being drafted in the 6th round around the likes of Michael Pittman Jr., who I think should shoot up a little higher, and I would definitely take over Devonta. But you got Robert Woods in the 6th round too, Brandon Ayuk, Adam Thielen, Hunter Renfrow. I would be taking Devonta Smith over all of these except for Pittman. So, yeah, and it's important to note that Pittman, it's not because I try to take all of my Colts bias out. And that might not be entirely possible, but Pittman's a number one, and he's got Matt Ryan in there, who's used to Julio Jones, that big body receiver. I'm going to be slamming the draft button on Michael Pittman. But like I'm saying, in that range, Devonta Smith is probably your best other option.
Yeah, I totally agree. Agree. I like to do that at the start of the year and just come up with a few sleepers and put them in the top corner of my page and just sort of keep an eye on where I am and what round and when I should be grabbing them. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for coming on the podcast, Dad. This was really, really fun. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure. My honor. This is a learning experience for me. This is really cool. And Owen, I think you're doing a really good thing. I think that it makes me proud to see you giving advice to others and sharing your knowledge and giving back, because when you're in on something, you're in full bore, and you really spend a lot of time with it, and you love to share and see other people succeed too. So keep up the good work.
I appreciate that. And I definitely want everybody to succeed. And you mentioned it during the podcast too. It's gonna be funny to hear other people from our own league hearing our opinions and maybe snaking a few of our players. But you're absolutely right. I'm here to share. I'm here to help. And I'm encouraging people to write into the podcast. You would have heard at the start of the podcast, follow us, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, tweet at me, message me. Like, let's get some questions in here. And for today, that's a wrap. Dad, any last words of wisdom?
If you like me, tell them to have me back.
All right, we out.
Hit it.
Okay, everybody, we're done here for today. You're going to want to listen to the next episode of official 1-0 Fantasy Football Podcast. Odog, out.
Welcome to the outtakes. 1 second. Do you know when they select?
No, I don't. I don't know who the player is going to be, Owen, but I know what position.
Okay.
I'll even put a name out there.
Okay, that works. What picks?
Okay, give me 1 sec. Just give me 1 sec before you. I was looking at one guy and I can't remember his name.
25? Does that sound familiar?
Well, it makes sense. This is where they finished. Yeah, it's where they finished in the playoff. So
I'll give you the big lead in. With the 25th overall pick in the 2020. Yeah, okay.
NFL draft prospects. I don't want to pick position because I know the positions. And give me a sec. Sorry.
Yeah, no good.
Owen, do you have a site that you can bring up real quick that'll by position?
What position am I looking at?
Cornerback.
Cornerback? Yeah.
Yeah.
2022. Stingley Jr., McDuffie, Booth.
I think because we're drafting late, we're not going to get Stingley.
It won't be Sauce Gardner, I wouldn't think. But Booth Jr., a Lamb, McCreary.
Booth, I think, was the guy. I think Booth was the guy, Joe Owen.
Andrew Booth Jr. from the Clemson from Clemson. Yeah, they list him. 6 foot, 194. Wow.
And he's a corner, right?
Yeah.
He's a corner, right? Yeah, that's him. Because it's six what? 6'4"?
6 foot. Nope, just 6 foot.
6 foot. No, perfect. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. With the 25th overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, Mike Drake predicts the Buffalo Bills will select
Andrew Booth Jr. from Clemson.
And what position would that be?
Oh, sorry. Cornerback. You want to do it again?
Just give me your answer again. Go cornerback. Yeah.
Yep.
The end. Poof. Owen was gone.